How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the 4th episode of Forged in Place. So up to this point, we've got the blade formed. It looks really good. The tang has been drawn out. That looks good too. We've also flared the belly side of the tang. So now we got to start addressing where our index finger is going to come into contact with the back of the blade or the heel. We're going to upset and flare out that area for comfort. So we're going to start doing that, and then we're going to follow that with heat treatment. Or the first portion of the heat treatment, which is the thermocycling. So that helps relieve some of the stress and help kind of prepare the grain and refine the grain structure within the steel for the final hardening of the blade. So let's get to it. Okay, so again, I'm focusing on the heel. Put the knife into the forge, tang first, because I don't care if the tang, again, I don't care if the tang gets overheated, but I do care if the blade gets overheated. Now, I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before, just at the back side of the blade. Get a hand torch, light it, have it ready, stand it by. You can also do this with an oxyacetylene torch, whatever you have handy. Get it clamped in. Now, shoot the torch on it as you hammer. This will help give you a little bit more time and a little bit more heat to work with. So I've gotten to a point where I feel really good. I really like the spread that I've gotten at the choil of the knife. So now I'm just doing some gentle heating so that I can, I know it looks really, really hot, but it's actually not that crazy hot. So I can do just some straightening heats, straighten things out a little bit here and there. But real quick look at the choil area. Let's see, get that. You can see how it's nice and spread. It's gonna be really nice and comfortable in there. So again, these are just the last couple kind of doot hits to straighten things out. Okay, so I just finished forging the blade. Everything's looking really great on it. So the next steps are to thermocycle it, so it's to prepare it and kind of relieve some of the stress, refine the grain, because I want it to also be tough. Finer grain equals a tougher knife. And so I'm going to do that out of my forge right now, and then prepare it. So basically do these thermocycles to prepare it for final hardening. Here we go. So before I start focusing on the blade, I like to focus on heating up actually the back side of the blade, because that will be the last part of the blade. Once I flip it around, that will take on any heat. So by starting with the tang being warm, then flipping it around and warming up the blade, the whole blade will come up to temperature quite nicely. So I'll let that come up to temp and then I'll flip it around. So now that the tang has come up to temp, you can see that it's mostly this back area that's gotten warm. So now I can turn around and I'll bob the blade in and out of the forge, and the knife blade will start coming up to temperature quite nicely, nice and evenly. You'll notice the tip will take on heat the fastest because it's the thinnest portion, and therefore it'll heat up the quickest. But what I want to do, and the reason I'm only bobbing it in and out just for a second, is so that even though it heats up the fastest, it also cools down the quickest. And so I'm continuing to let the other portions be exposed to high temperatures while I'm bobbing the blade in and out. And that way they kind of, and because they're thicker, they will retain that heat a bit better. So even though that it's only for a second that I'm going in and bobbing back out, going in and bobbing back out, the rest of the blade will be coming up to temperature quite nicely. And if I feel like any part of it's getting too hot, it's always going to be the edge or the tip. So I'll just let it sit out for a second longer and then bring it back up. It's pretty nice and even right now. This is also good practice for heat treating. So right about now, I would say that's a good temperature to heat treat the blade from. I just did the first thermocycle. We're letting the blade come down in temp. You can still see some dull color in it. We want it to come down to black. So on the third time, I'm going to quench it, and then I'll do what's called commonly referred to as a subcritical anneal. So then I'll bring it back up, actually to kind of the dull color you were just seeing in the blade, but not much higher. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm quenching it, I'm hardening the blade, allowing the steel to transform to martensite, and then I'm over tempering it by bringing it back up to around 1200, 1250 degrees. I don't really want it to go past 1300 degrees, which is why it's called a subcritical anneal, because most steels, the critical temperature actually starts at around 13, depending on the steel, but around 1375 or so. And so I want to stay below that because I don't want the steel to start transitioning into austenite. I just want to temper it, and I want to over temper it. So I'm going to put it back in the forge again. Again, I'm going to start by heating up the tang area, then I'm going to flip the blade around and then start heating up the blade. So back in the steel, back in the steel, back in the forge I go. Tang's nice and hot. The blade is still relatively cool. So now I'm going to flip it around. You can see I've adjusted the flame so it's considerably softer in there, which is nice because then the heat isn't so intense. It allows things to come up more evenly. More control. I like it. It's looking good to me. Yeah, it's looking real good. Nice. So once it starts getting to an even color across the entire blade, I'll probably put it in maybe 1-2 more times to let it come up again, as though I was getting ready to quench it. But I'm not going to quench it. I'm just going to let it cool. Time to let it air cool. Bring it down to black. So light is really tricky. It's nice to kind of do this kind of stuff in kind of a dimmer light, because if you can see when the blade's not reflecting light, you can still see just the slightest little bit of color in there. It's getting pretty low. This is the third thermocycle. I have it sitting in there tang first, so that the tang will come up to temp, and then I'll flip the blade around and allow the blade to come up to temp. All right, tang is warm. It's definitely hot, but as you can see, it's cooler in the blade than it is in the tang. Exactly what I want. So now I'm gonna start bobbing it in and out. Forge, bringing it back up to temperature, bringing the blade up to temperature, making sure it's nice and even. So once the blade is up to temp, it's getting there, almost there. So once the blade is up to temp, I'm going to go into my quench bucket. This is my oil right here. I'm going to quench it. I don't want any flames, so I'm not going to interrupt it. I'm going to quench it for a solid 10 seconds. When you see flames, that's not a good thing. That means you're pulling the blade out when it's way too hot still. You do not want that. Because what that means is you're not getting a proper hardening or transition into martensite. You want to get from austenite to martensite quickly, relatively quickly. Getting there. Alright. And you don't want any heat in between, or you don't want any delay, or some kind of like some weirdness. Basically, weird stuff happens. All right, here we go. Almost there. See the temps, really nice, especially along the cutting edge. I'm most concerned about having a consistent heat from tip to heel on the knife. It's such a short blade, though. It's pretty easy to get it all the way down the length of the blade. Alright, here we go. So smoke does come off, which is fine. But you don't want to see flames. Flames mean you're pulling the steel out. When it's way too hot still. Okay, I'm going to say that's good. So what I'm going to do now is let this cool completely and convert to martensite, completely to martensite. And then I'm going to wipe it down, get the excess oil off. I'm going to go back in the fire to do some subcritical annealing, which again is just bringing up, instead of to full austenite at a hardening temperature, I'm just going to bring it up to like a dull red, a very dull red. Almost kind of like where you can almost just only barely see in color, but not much more than that. Okay, I'm gonna say that's good. And if I can touch it, which I can definitely touch it now, it is cool. It is plenty cold. All right, so I'm gonna wipe this thing down. All right, thank you so much for joining me for this fourth episode in this blacksmith bench knife series. I really appreciate you being here and watching. I hope it's been really helpful. If you got any questions, ask down below in the comments. If you've enjoyed this and you got value from it, please, I would love a like. And as always, make sure you hit the subscribe button. On to the next video.